Hi, this is Tracy Taylor with the Wasatch Taxpayers Association. We decided to do the school board candidate interviews for the Wasatch School District. There's 3 seats that are open, and there's a 5-member board. And so also for those of you that have been concerned about your property taxes in the last couple of years, just so you understand this graph, this over 70% of your property taxes go to the Wasatch School District. So it's a very important election, and today we have Brad Ehlert, who is running for the seat E in Midway. And Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run?
Well, thank you. Brad Ehlert, Midway resident. I have 3 kids, a wife, one of which has graduated from Wasatch High School. 2 are currently students in the Wasatch School District. For me, I have been a technology and safety expert with schools for the last 25 years. It's what I do, it's what my business is. I do it all over the country. And my current focus now is actually on mental health. So that's why I'm so passionate about what's going on here. When I got involved with the Future Schools Committee, going through that process, I really became more interested in what was happening here locally, and decided at that point to really start looking into maybe the next time the seat opened up, I would consider running. And when it did open up, and with this election, I decided that it was time to run and start sharing more information from the data and information that I've been doing and for the work I've been doing across the country, and hopefully we can improve our district even more with that.
Well, that was my next question is, what singles you out and what do you bring to the table if you are on the school board that maybe they currently don't have on the school board?
Sure. So for me, with my background, so things like teacher microphones, I was instrumental in doing a lot of the development of that work, panic buttons in schools, which now we have a state law that's been passed requiring those. I've done a lot of that work and development and have some patents around that technology. Those types of things are what make me different. This is my space. This is what I'm an expert in. And I do a lot of things based on data. So I crunch the data, I look at data, and I try to find out exactly why are things happening, and if things don't happen, what do we need to change to make a difference?
What financial, we are a taxpayers association, and how does that data crunching help your decisions financially? You are a business owner.
Sure.
Talk more about the financials of the school district.
So obviously with data crunching, everything comes down to what does our student enrollment look like? When you talk about property taxes and 70% of the taxes in the county are for schools, a portion of that goes to the state. A portion of that is directly done for the schools locally. With that being said, we get our money based on a per pupil funding mechanism. So if we have growth, we need more money. If we have less, then we're going to have less money. And we need to understand that as things grow or as things shrink, we need to make sure we are accommodating that either direction, making sure we're looking at the data, not just reports of what might be, but looking at the actual data that is.
And you're established in the community, you have kids in the school district, you have friends and colleagues throughout the valley. What do you say to the people that are looking for somebody to look at the budget of the school district with fresh eyes and be able to clear-eyed look at the budget and analyze the budget and make decisions that are not easy, but they have to be done? And so how do you approach that even though you have friends in the community, right?
Sure. As the largest employer in the county, it's very easy to have friends who work for the school district and have acquaintances that work for the school district. One of the things that I've become pretty well known at in the industry for what I do is looking with fresh eyes at budgets that exist and trying to maximize those dollars. Sometimes that means we have to cut programs. My goal is to take the dollars we have, oftentimes, and see what we can do and how can we extend it as far as possible. So when you can look at a budget with fresh eyes, you can sometimes see things that maybe other people don't see. Maybe you see there's commercials right now on TV for Rocket Money. Rocket Money, it ties to your bank account and it's like, hey, did you know you're paying for 3 subscriptions of the same thing? We might have similar things where we're paying for things that maybe aren't getting the same utilization, or maybe we're doubling up on things that we don't need to. Sometimes we just need to look at that. The best resource we have within the county, within the school district, are teachers. That is an area that we need to make sure we protect, because they're the ones teaching the kids. Those are the ones that deserve the bulk of the money that is being paid and collected by taxpayers, is the people who are directly affecting our kids.
So what are maybe 2 or 3 of your priorities or things that you feel are important that you want to try to accomplish if you get on the school board?
The biggest thing, and I've done a lot of work, in the beginning of the campaign, I did not do any press releases. I didn't talk to the press intentionally, because this isn't about me. If it was, if I had bigger political ambitions, I would have done a lot of that. This was about going out and talking to members of the community. What I heard as the number one thing, whether they support the new high school or not, nobody liked the process. And because of that, transparency and accountability is number 1 on my list. We have to have a balance between the taxpayer, the school district administration, and the students. We all have to work together. And so that is number 1, is transparency and accountability. Obviously, we want student success and things like that, but those things can come and will come, and we can do programs to help them be successful. And those programs, a lot of them already exist, and maybe we just need to improve upon them. But if we don't have the community behind us in what we're doing, how can we move this forward? Because right now we have a lot of division. So we need to figure out, so with that transparency and accountability, the next item is figuring out how do we unite the community together. And I think a big way for that is to do it through community engagement. The community engagement that we had with the Future Schools Committee, that is one way to do it. But it didn't feel engagement. The engagement didn't feel like it was what it could have been. And when the decisions were done at the end, it wasn't, hey, we made a decision, this is the direction we're going. It was, we made a decision, we're now going to build a high school, even though I don't ever remember voting on that. I don't remember ever being asked, do you want to build a high school?
We were both on that Future Schools Committee, so there was no official vote of any decisions that came out of that committee. We discussed some things, but there were things that we could not discuss, like why did the bond fail, and they didn't want to talk about that, but that is exactly what came out of that process, was the school in the Northfields, and that was something we were not allowed to talk about. So I heard that as well from people in that process, but so it felt like they were including people, but it didn't really come out that way. In fact, they probably made more upset people at the end of that, because we devoted a lot of time to that committee.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah. So one thing we've discovered as the Taxpayers Association is the fact that our enrollment is actually plateauing. It is not increasing, especially to the trajectory that they even said in that Future Schools Committee. The data that was coming out of there was different, but the budgets have doubled. The budget has doubled in the last 4 years, but the enrollment has leveled out. Can you explain that to people and maybe your thoughts on some of that?
Sure. So the numbers, which you get from the state website, every October 1st, they have to report on to the state what the enrollment numbers are. The enrollment numbers have plateaued for K-8, in the K-8 area. That area is actually seeing a decrease. The high school is seeing about a half a point increase each year from a percentage standpoint. So we are seeing a little bit of growth, but one of the things that is a challenge during the COVID years, one of the things we have to remember is there was a lot of extra funding that came in. So part of that budget increase that we saw was additional dollars that were coming from federal or state money. Now that that's over, we get used to certain budgets. And so now we've seen as our property values have increased, and I think we all have, we've all seen our property values increase. You would expect that there would be a decrease in the amount of money collected, but that's not the case. And so for me, one of the things when I look at those dollars, I really ask myself, if we're not seeing leaps and bounds of growth, then what's going on with that? Why are we doing that? And I think that's something that a lot of people in the public are asking as well, because people are tired. They understand that their assessed value keeps going up. But if people don't need more money, then they don't need to collect more just because your assessed value goes up. But we are. I also understand inflation. We have inflation, costs went up and things like that. But overall, that is a big area that needs to be looked at.
Well, and they also got new growth in our county, not just reassessed existing properties,
right,
but actually 1.4 billion in new growth. And so that ended up being like $4.6 million of extra money they got, besides some of the, remnants of the COVID increases and such too.
Sure. And
go ahead.
Sorry. And
that's fine.
I mean, recently, Kendall Crittenden even said about 80% or 60 to 70%, I think is what he said.
I think he said.
Yeah, 60 to 70% of all the homes in Wasatch County are second homes. Which, if we're having that amount of growth of second home being done here in the county, we need to remember that as well. We may have lots of growth in homes being built, but are we really seeing that translate into students in the schools?
And I think that disconnect is there. Within the school district, within the community, they just see all these homes going up. They don't realize a lot of them are rentals.
Right.
And they're back on the market as a rental, but also these are retirees. These are people, so the fact that the median price of a home in Wasatch County now is $1 million, those aren't your young families anymore. Plus, people are having less kids in general. So those trends are happening. And even 2 years ago, that wasn't being discussed in that Future Schools Committee because that was we weren't sure how it was going to pan out, but we did bring it up because over in Park City with $2 million as a median price for a home, their enrollment has been dropping for a decade. So we've already seen it happen in Park City.
Right.
So another question is the lease revenue bond. You kind of brought that up in the process. What have you heard from the public, maybe some of that, but also what are your thoughts of that? And whether you think that is a proper way in the future, moving forward now, citizens are concerned that that is going to be the routine now, is take it away from the voters. They don't get to decide anything anymore. That money is just voted on by 5 school board members.
Right. And I think we did hear it when the lease revenue bond was being discussed. One of the items that was mentioned was the board members were elected in, therefore they were given the right to vote on this. Which, if that's the case, if you're not happy with it, then vote the people out that voted on it, and you need to vote for someone different if you think they bypassed the will of the people. The challenge for me was I work with districts on bonds all over the country, not just small bonds, but really big billion-dollar bonds as well. One of the challenges is when you have a vote for no by a community, you need to, as a district, go back and figure out why did they vote no, and then what do we need to change to do it.
So just to say really
Yeah.
quickly, for those folks that just barely moved into our community a year ago,
Sure.
we had the high school in the Northfields as a bond election in 2019, and it was voted down by almost 70%, which is pretty high. So I just wanted to
Right.
give people a little history of what you're talking about. So that lease revenue bond then
Yep.
ended up being the exact same thing.
Yeah, so the lease revenue bond, so the bond in 2019 was a high school and an elementary. What they ended up building with the lease revenue bond was the new high school. The report that was done said that we were going to build a 330,000 square foot school. From what I can see, it's going to be about 400,000 square feet. So we have a bigger building, more expensive, which obviously at $500 a square foot, 70,000 square feet adds up to a lot of money. Do I think we should use that method? No. You do not get the public on board when you do that. If you can do things where you operate within an existing budget because you're fiscally responsible, then that might be a different story, but that's not what's happening here. We have seen an increase of tax collection for the school district, and because of that, now we're saying on top of that we need to build more and more, but right now we just don't have the growth to support that either, so that becomes another problem.
Well, and that's what we've kind of talked about in the Future Schools Committee a couple of years ago. We keep bringing it up because we tried to have some of these discussions with the public and with the school administrators that were all in the room with us.
Right.
I mean, so, you know, the enrollment for the high school is like 2,500 right now. The capacity, they say, is 2,000. So when you're building a whole nother school, I can show you some of these enrollment data, which all of this will be on our website. You can go take a look at this. But you're seeing flattening out of the elementary, middle school, and high school enrollment. It's flattening. It's not on a trajectory that we were told 2 years ago. And so when this high school is finished, if they take 500 out of, you know, an over capacity high school, there's going to maybe be 1,000 kids in that school and maybe 1,700 in this school, or I mean, it's overbuilt for the current need. Maybe 20 years from now we might need that, but so how does that adjust what happens with curriculum and options for parents and kids when they're split up now between two schools?
The challenge with that is so all really, really good points. Data like this becomes really valuable. This is the type of stuff that I like to look at because this shows us trends. When it comes to things like splitting a high school, let's say it's almost 2,600 students. If you take almost 2,600 students, divide it in half, that's 1,300 students in each building. If you only have 5 kids or 10 kids who want to do a class, how do you have that? Do you have a teacher who can do that? Maybe you don't. If you had it combined and you had 20 kids because you had 10 at each school, you know, there would be options there that, generally speaking, you have the ability to have more class options. The bigger the schools are, that tends to happen. I do a lot of work in Texas. In Texas, they have super schools, like really big schools. And that's one of the reasons why, is because they give a lot of options for the type of classes and things that people want to do.
So how do you think the taxpayers and the voters of our community, what are you personally going to do to try to get the taxpayers on an even playing field with everybody else that the school board's looking at?
Well, I think a big thing to that is sharing data. People want to know the actual data. If we do sound bites, we're all really good at sound bites, TikTok, Facebook. It's made us really good at that. We don't just need sound bites. We need data that people can actually look at and understand, and it needs to be presented in a way where they can review that data and realize why things are being done the way they are. When the new school opens, one of the challenges is going to be is how do we fund that? How do we fund all the new employees? Or if there's half of them, go to the new school, we're still going to need some more because there is some classes you can't duplicate. So we will have an increase. Do we need to increase taxes to do that? Well, that's a problem because people are already feeling overtaxed and overburdened. A lot of people in this community, yes, we have some people who have a lot of money who have moved in, but we also have people who have lived here for a long time who their incomes are not rising at the same level as everything else.
Right.
We can't price them out just because we think we want or need more. We need options.
So the Heber CRA is something Heber City's coming to the school district in Wasatch County wanting to take like 20% of their property tax proceeds to help revitalize Heber. Yes or no? Are you for or against that? I'm going to ask a really quick yes or no question here.
The way it's done today, I would say no.
Okay. Let me ask you, is there anything else you wanted to bring up that I haven't already discussed?
I think the biggest thing is, I think people in the community want change. They're ready for change, and for me, that means we need to find ways to change, and it's going to start at the school board level. So that's a really big element for me. I think we need to find ways to make sure the community is involved as much as possible, and we need to be civil about how we do things so that we practice what we preach when it comes to bullying and things like that. We shouldn't have bullies on the school board, we shouldn't have them in admin, and we shouldn't have them in our schools. We need to find ways that we can all work and talk together and stop being divided and realize it is about the kids. Now let's come together and find ways to do that.
Great. Tell everybody why they should vote for you and also your contact info, where they can find more information.
Well, so I'm Brad Ehlert. Again, I'm an interested parent with kids in the school district. I hope that you'll vote for me because I want to improve what we have and continue building on what we have while doing it in a sustainable manner that we can all be proud of and make us one of the best. bradforwasatch.com is where you can get more information about me, and you can email me at bradforwasatch@gmail.com, and I will respond as much as possible and provide as much information as I can. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.